welcome you to our fourth session of College Connections monthly webinar series. As you may know, this series is designed to give you a unique inside perspective of the programs, people, priorities, and partnerships of the Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences. Before we begin, please note that we are recording this session and we'll be sharing it via email with all who registered. If you know someone who may be interested in what we cover here today, please feel free to share the recording with them. We have launched a dedicated web page for College Connections, and you'll find it by searching College Connections on our college website. There you can find links to past sessions and future events. Today's topic is water quality partnerships. I'm joined here today by Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Secretary Patrick McDonell and the DEP Director of the Chesapeake Bay Program Office, Jill Whitcomb, and the Director of our Agriculture and Environment Center, Matt Royer. To get us started, I'm delighted to introduce Secretary McDonell. Secretary McDonell was nominated to his position by Governor Wolf in 2016, but his career with DEP began in 1998. Previously, he served as the department's Director of Policy, ran the State Energy Office, where he coordinated renewable energy and energy efficiency issues, and served as the DEP's Deputy Secretary for Administration. In addition, he spent more than 3 years as Executive Policy Manager for the former Public Utility Commissioner Pam Whitmer, focusing on electric, natural gas, and water issues. Secretary McDonell has served in several roles with the Environment Council of the States, which works to improve the capability of state environmental agencies and their leaders to protect us and improve human health and the environment of the United States. He has served as Treasurer, Vice President, and Vice Chair of Innovation and the Productivity Committee. Secretary McDonell earned his bachelor's degree from DeSalle University and has a master's degree in political science from Lehigh University. Joining Secretary McDonell today is Jill Whitcomb, who is the Director of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Chesapeake Bay Office. In her role, Director Whitcomb provides oversight, leadership, and support of Pennsylvania's Chesapeake Bay watershed restoration efforts. She manages statewide agricultural compliance, inspection, enforcement, and oversees the joint administration of the Nutrient Management Program with the State Conservation Commission. Director Whitcomb also oversees the statewide Conservation District Support Section. Prior to this role, she was the Environmental Group Manager for the Non-Point Source Compliance Section in the DEP Bureau of Clean Water. So I will first turn it over to our partners from DEP, and we'll hear from Secretary McDonell and from Director Whitcomb. Please take it away, Secretary and Director.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you all today, and let me just start out by thanking Penn State, Dean Roush and Matt Royer. A number of other people have been great partners with us throughout this effort. You may be familiar with our efforts around Chesapeake Bay, but just to kind of level set, we have a responsibility to develop a watershed implementation plans that reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, which is our part of our contribution to pollution within Chesapeake Bay. There's other jurisdictions, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, West Virginia, New York, DC, that also participate in the effort. But frankly, you know, we have a big hill to climb. 33 million pounds of nitrogen, just as an example, that we've been working to reduce throughout the watershed. So when we started developing what we call the Phase 3 watershed implementation plan, we really took a step back and decided to build it from ground up. So some of the things that we've done and set out to do in that was make sure we're expanding our collaboration, working with multi-agency programs and partners to increase efficiencies and outcomes, implementing best management practices, making sure we're accelerating the implementation through additional and flexible funds for project implementation and staff that need for sufficient funding, not only for best management practices, but also for local technical assistance, as well as state agency oversight is required across the board. Expanding technical assistance, focusing on demand and necessary training for internal and external personnel. And then really sharing our success stories, working with state and county partners to make sure we're sharing our progress. So what we've learned over the last several years is what it took, and what we've accomplished is, I think, building a new level of partnership amongst community members, all levels of government, academic partners like Penn State. We've done unprecedented outreach to our local stakeholders and tried to give them as much ownership as possible in carrying out these water quality improvements. We've equipped them as much as we can to help ensure success. Some of the things that we've provided include data, so they can identify which waters they can target for best management practices to have the most impact. We've supplied them with local planning and technical toolboxes, with local implementation toolboxes, and with a countywide action plan template. We developed a pilot process, getting the first 4 counties on board: Lancaster, York, Franklin, and Adams. And this has been key because of their feedback, we've been able to make the county planning process even better. Some of the things we learned there, they told us they need full-time local coordinators. They need more flexible and accessible funding sources for projects. And they need on-demand training support. And we've worked to deliver on each of these. In terms of local coordinators, DEP has invested more than $2.5 million in the past 2 years in funding local community clean water coordinators, hired or contracted by the county lead entities. We've put out flexible funding through countywide action plan implementation grants for counties that have developed their plans. They qualify for block grants, essentially. The allocation methodology for the money is based on the relative nutrient loads of that county. And in 2020, more than $6 million was awarded to the Phase 1 counties. We're providing on-demand training. We have a Clean Water Academy online, and that houses several courses, modules, recorded webinars for reference material, and we continue to add more every month. We've worked with Penn State to develop some of these courses, including urban stormwater basics and the manure management planning courses. And we're providing support. Our Chesapeake Bay office, which Jill Whitcomb, who you'll hear from in a moment, heads, provides ongoing support to counties through development and implementation of their countywide action plans. We've also enlisted the department's regional offices to provide support and coordination with our Tier 3 and Tier 4 counties. As a result of this genuine two-way partnership building, Pennsylvania now has an unprecedented commitment and action underway in the watershed. What we've learned is engagement leads to buy-in, buy-in leads to action, action leads to results. Even with the challenges of the pandemic, the counties continue to work to reach out to farmers and other landowners, apply for funding help from organizations, partner with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and other environmental organizations, launch projects, and complete projects. We've prioritized geographically based on local water quality improvements. In Phase 1, the first 8 counties make up approximately 54% of our nitrogen load to the bay, so we focused there first. The Tier 3 and 4 counties represent the 26 additional counties. And then there are some counties that we consider to have minimal loading, and we're still working with them through conservation districts, but they're not being asked to develop a full countywide action plan. We're targeting as much funding as we possibly can, and many of our funding programs support farmers in implementing BMPs to reduce nitrogen. And we're working with federal funding sources like the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and NRCS to identify funding sources and direct those funds high impact areas and projects. We're continuing to work with other state agencies like the State Conservation Commission as they provide funds to conservation districts for ag BMP implementation through the Conservation Excellence Grant Program and the REAP tax credit program. And we share our successes and status of actions through our monthly newsletter and through events like this one, which you can find our newsletter on the DEP website by searching for the Phase 3 WIP newsletter. Anyone can subscribe and receive it in their inbox. I think the success of the program has really been built around the partnerships that we developed, and that took time. That took resources, but in the end, I think we've built up a great deal of trust between our agency and people in the communities, our conservation districts, the farm community, municipalities, really everybody who we're going to need in order to achieve our goals, which, yes, are somewhat focused on Chesapeake Bay, but the real goal is for us to deliver good water quality here within the Commonwealth, in your streams, in your lakes, in your rivers. So thank you for your participation today. And I will turn it over to Jill Whitcomb, who knows way more about all of this stuff than I do. So Jill.
Thank you, Secretary. And thank you so much for inviting us to attend today and to really share the good news, right? That's really what this is about. We are trying to motivate people to do more, and really the successes that have been occurring just kind of transcend what has happened in prior years. As the Secretary had mentioned, you know, we looked at this Phase 3 WIP process as a way to take from a grassroots effort and look to how we can support the local communities, the landowners, the conservation districts better, so that we're collaborating more than we are driving or pushing. And I think that's really where it comes down to, the collaborative spirit, the effort that we are all putting forth, not just at the state level, but also at the local level. What we want to do is to provide that support and to walk alongside our counties and to learn from them and respond and react in a way that is supportive of their efforts. We try to elicit these types of responses through weekly webinars that we hold with our county coordinators and weekly touch base Tuesdays that we hold with the tier 3 and 4 counties. We also have bi-weekly sessions with the pilot counties and the tier 2 counties that are actively implementing their countywide action plans, so we can learn from them and we can adapt as we move along. A lot of what has come out recently as far as the funding sources, the block grant idea, that came from the counties, that came from our local communities, providing that feedback to us as far as flexible funding, on-demand training, and the necessary technical and administrative support that they need from our office in order to support them moving forward. So it really does become a supportive framework, and we try to achieve all of that together and not just one driving another. It's a collaborative environment, and I think that we see a lot more coming out of it because, as the Secretary had mentioned, local buy-in actually leads to the action, and the action leads to results. So thank you.
Lovely to have you both here. And thank you very much, Secretary McDonell, Director Whitcomb. So next, I'd like to introduce Matt Royer, who's the Director of our Agriculture Environment Center. Matt has nearly 2 decades of experience in building watershed coalitions and partnerships and working collaboratively, as we've just been discussing, with agriculture and conservation communities. Prior to becoming director, he led the AEC's Lower Susquehanna Initiative. In addition to his work on the AEC, Matt is also the Associate Director of Partnerships and Engagement for our Institute of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences, or SAFES, which was presented during our last webinar. And he serves as a faculty member in the Environmental Resource Management undergraduate degree program here. Matt earned his bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College and his law degree from Duke University. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Dean Roush. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone here this afternoon. And yeah, when I got the invite to be part of this panel, not only was thrilled to share the stage with Secretary McDonell and Jill here, but the title, Water Quality Partnerships, the Ripple Effect, really, it's kind of right down to my wheelhouse and interest level. That's kind of what we do at the AEC. And so I wanted to share a few slides here that give you a little more insight into what the Ag and Environment Center and others at the college are doing related to these issues. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint.
I can see it, Matt.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, I want to start by giving a little bit of an overview of the Agriculture and Environment Center. Again, we are located within the college, and we're part of, as Dean Roush had mentioned, part of the college's Institute of Sustainable Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Science. And you heard from our Institute Director, Karen Fisher-Vanden, last month, if you tuned in last month, all about the SAFES Institute. So we are a center within that institute that really focuses on these water quality issues and the impacts that land use and land management have on water and the environment. And it's really our mission to bring and catalyze and integrate the research, the extension work, the outreach, the learning to kind of focus these on problem solving related to these land and integrated land and water issues. And we do this by building and sustaining partnerships. So again, this focus on partnerships is really right within our kind of mission statement and our objectives. We bring the college's assets to bear in essentially problem solving, helping communities and stakeholders, from maybe a broader policy level, such as working on some of the Chesapeake Bay work that Secretary McDonell and Jill had highlighted, to very on the ground community-oriented solutions. So I just want to set the stage briefly by thinking about our water quality issues really primarily as a land problem. So we've talked about the Chesapeake Bay, and Secretary McDonell and Jill setting the stage on some of the efforts the Commonwealth has underway related to Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts. This is a map from the Chesapeake Bay program of the watershed, the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So you can kind of see headwaters in New York, large swath of Pennsylvania, I think about 2/3 of the central portion of the state. And then of course, Maryland and Virginia that have the Bay proper, a little bit of Delaware, a little bit of West Virginia, District of Columbia is in red down there. So this is the Bay watershed, 64,000 square miles, includes a big part of Pennsylvania, primarily the drainage of the Susquehanna River, and the basic land uses of forest, urban, and agriculture. You can get a snapshot of that from this picture. If you were to look at some of the mapping that the program has done on sources of nutrient pollution, and here is delivered loads of total nitrogen to the bay. Red is the larger loads being delivered. You will see, like, if you look at these maps, it tracks almost perfectly the areas that are human influence, that where we're growing our food, where we're living in our cities and towns, and rural areas. So really it becomes a land issue. It's how we have altered the landscape from Penn's Woods to this mix, wonderful mix of forest and agriculture and urban lands that we all love as Pennsylvania, as uniquely Pennsylvanian, where we live, work, and play. So we think of our issues as land problems, and that makes them very complex. There's a lot of good historic successes in addressing water quality problems with the passage of the Clean Water Act in the 70s, early 70s, and then dealing with point source pollution that comes out of pipes, industrial and wastewater. We don't have the Cuyahoga River catching on fire anymore. These are tremendous success stories. But what we do have is some challenges of runoff off of our landscapes and our altered landscapes. And in fact, over 90% of the current impaired waters in Pennsylvania, well over 90%, are resulting from non-point source pollution. So runoff off of the landscape, those agricultural lands, those urban lands. And so you do have a multiple and diffuse sources, not from a single pipe, across the landscape. You have multiple drivers of what's causing that. Weather plays a role, how humans manage the land, how individual landowners, farmers, and others manage the land. Many, many different actors from urban to rural sectors across many scales. These are classically what we would think of as difficult, challenging, or wicked problems in kind of an academic frame of mind. And it really does require a multidisciplinary, very collaborative partnership approach to problem solving. And so we like to think here at the college as the Commonwealth's land grant university, and the college really thinking about and almost living that three-legged stool of teaching, research, and extension that's part of the land grant mission as a unique partner in these partnerships, where we can really bring some assets to the table when it relates to looking at how we manage our land, how we manage our agricultural systems, right? And how that impacts water quality through the teaching of our students, the research we're doing, and the extension and outreach work we do in our communities through our vast network of Penn State Extension. So what I'm gonna do is highlight a few partnerships that I've been involved with and others at Penn State from a global to a local scale to address these issues. So starting globally, the Chesapeake Bay is a major problem related to nutrient pollution, as we've talked about, but it really is only one example of this problem across the world. Really across the developed and developing world in particular, where you have had successes in developing countries and growing food and growing our cities, you do have this excessive, it's almost a too much of a good thing type of problem where too many nutrients are getting released to the environment, causing eutrophication issues in major water bodies. So the Baltic Sea is another one of those. And we've done some collaboration exchange with the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, SLU in Uppsala, Sweden, where they've hosted myself and some other faculty in bringing a group of undergrads. We've done this twice now, and we were hoping to do it this spring, but global pandemic threw a wrench in that. Hopefully in the future, we'll be bringing another group of undergrads studying environmental science and agricultural science to learn what's going on in Sweden and the other Baltic states to address pollution problems there, and also share what we're learning here in the Chesapeake and building a broader exchange of that and a learning opportunity for our students and researchers. And hopefully we can learn from global partners across the world some innovations. Bringing a little closer to home, regional partnerships in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Some of you may have been participatory in our Pennsylvania in the Balance conferences. Really efforts predated this about a decade to look at a vision for agriculture in Pennsylvania that meets the dual goals of thriving, highly productive agriculture and our clean rivers and streams. And we re-engaged stakeholders in 2016 really just as the phase 3 watershed implementation plan, the phase 3 WIP mentioned by Secretary McDonell and Jill was on the horizon. It was about to ramp up, and really bringing farmers together with the regulators, together with multitude of stakeholders across agriculture and conservation to think about innovations in developing this new WIP and really kind of meeting these goals, accelerating efforts to meet these goals here in Pennsylvania. What came out of that were a lot of ideas related to agriculture being not just a problem to be dealt with, but the solution itself. Really farmer agriculture driven solutions that harness the inherent culture of stewardship that farmers have in Pennsylvania and really across the world. We had a follow-up conference in 2019 once the phase 3 WIP draft elements were developed, and that really helped to inform those agriculture elements, and were part of the stakeholder engagement and partnership that led to our current implementation plan in Pennsylvania. We also have partnerships at the statewide level related to education, training, and research. The college, in partnership with and with support from state agencies, including DEP, State Conservation Commission, and Department of Agriculture, run Pennsylvania's nutrient management program, and that helps to train certified planners. That helps to provide resources for conservation districts, farm organizations, and farmers themselves on how to develop manure management plans where those are required, and really provides that kind of annual training and research that goes into good nutrient management across the state. Professor Charlie White runs that program. He is extension and research faculty in soil fertility and nutrient management here at Penn State. PA One Stop is a really exciting tool that's been produced by our college. Jennifer Weld is the director of the PA One Stop tool. And this tool is really a farm planning and mapping tool that allows farmers to use it to develop their farm maps necessary for nutrient management or manure management plans, and have various planning modules to even develop erosion sediment control plans for their farms. We've been participatory in gathering data from farmers voluntarily, in sending out surveys to farmers. Our first big survey was in 2016, and we followed up just last winter in the 4 priority counties of Lancaster, York, Franklin, and Adams County, where we're inviting farmers to self-report the conservation practices they may have installed on their own time with their own money without any government cost share. It is hard to track those practices because farmers are doing it themselves, but this has given an avenue for farmers to report what they're doing, and importantly, get credit for the great work they are doing. We're part of a statewide coalition that's fairly new here in Pennsylvania, but is very exciting, a soil health coalition. So key folks within Penn State Extension, like Stuart Diker, Sarah Xenophon from our center, are active in the statewide steering committee, Stroud Water Research Center, Pennsylvania No-Till Alliance playing key roles, and others in that growing coalition to spread the important word of good soil health practices for water quality. Another program that is statewide but is brought local to the county level is the Master Watershed Stewards Program. So this is a program we now have. I wouldn't say it's statewide, but we have it based at a county level. And by the end of 2021, it will be available in 30 counties throughout Pennsylvania. It started in the Lehigh Valley. It's grown to a lot of counties in Southeast, South Central, as well as the western part of the state now. And this is a great program where extension educators partnering with local conservation districts and other conservation organizations train citizen volunteers as master watershed stewards. It's modeled on the very successful Master Gardeners program. And to date, we have trained almost 800 master watershed stewards, and providing the stewards and their volunteers that they engage over 56,000 volunteer hours, doing things like you see in these pictures, planting riparian buffers and restoring stream banks with live staking. All told, educating, as you see here, almost 270,000 Pennsylvanians on good clean water efforts. And those numbers are thankfully provided by Aaron Frederick, who is our statewide coordinator of this program. Our Agriculture and Environment Center has a unique program in a unique area of Pennsylvania, the Lower Susquehanna. The Lower Susquehanna, if you remember from those maps, it always glows red. It is an area that has its high level of nutrient load and sediment load to the Chesapeake Bay and to local waters, primarily because of the strong agricultural lands, the high fertility of the soils. A lot of agriculture goes on there and has historically gone on there. And that's coupled with maybe some of the more intensive urbanization in the Pennsylvania's part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed as well. So we collaborate with Jen Fetter of Extension and have a list of hundreds of volunteers throughout this region. And then we link volunteers with partners, clean water partners that are looking for volunteers to get projects in the ground. It might be a municipality, it might be a conservation district, it might be a local watershed group. And so this way, we're helping build capacity of those local partners. We're providing great opportunities for volunteers to learn about clean water and get involved through community engagement. And all the while, these projects help to plant and maintain buffers and rain gardens and things like that. And we're helping to clean the water in Pennsylvania's hotspot of nutrient and sediment contributions to the bay. Another partnership we're very involved with is Lancaster Clean Water Partners. Lancaster is kind of that county which definitely has the highest load contributions by far, and is kind of the highest tier county along with York in the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan. So our staff, which includes not only myself, but Kristen Koch, Sarah Xenophon, and Lauren Schaefer, are very active in the steering committee and action teams that have been formed in the county. This is really an effort through that county coordination idea that Jill and Secretary McDonell had shared to really provide collaboration across the many entities that are working in Lancaster County, so we can all contribute higher efficiencies to these issues through a partnership approach. One very exciting aspect we're contributing to the Clean Water Partners in Lancaster is really a pilot project that is training the watershed leaders of tomorrow. It's called the Lancaster Watershed Leadership Academy. So myself and Allison Gibson, the director of the Clean Water Partners, together with our college's Rural and Urban Leadership Institute, J.D. Dunbar and Tara Homan, the four of us have developed a blended curriculum of watershed management, partnership building, and leadership training. And we right now have 8 full-time scholars who are in the program. These are pictures of some of the things we've done, doing things in the field, learning from landowners and partners on how to engage, et cetera. So that by the time these scholars graduate in December, they will be bona fide trained leaders to lead the next watershed partnership in their home watersheds in the county. Finally, I wanted to describe our community watershed engagement programs at the Agriculture and Environment Center. So these are where we, our staff helps to facilitate watershed partnerships and provide some leadership and coordination for a team of partners working locally in a priority watershed. Not only do we provide that kind of leadership and coordination services in those focused watersheds, we also bring Penn State's research, extension, student assets to bear. We get interns involved and excited about this stuff. And many of our alumni interns are now graduated and have jobs in this arena, including, I have to mention our probably prize alumni, Jenna Mitchell, former intern our Ag and Environment Center, is now the Pennsylvania Director for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and a distinguished alumni. So you see there, we do a lot of focus down in that hotspot red area. This map shows those delivered loads, but we do some work in the State College area too, through our Sustainable Watersheds at Penn State program. Involves some curriculum that I teach, as well as getting our interns involved. And right now we're working very closely with county action plan coordinators in Center County to help support some of the work of the Center County action plan. And I just want to share a couple of slides that give you an idea of the impact of these watershed partnerships. We just wrapped up a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant that got our Chickies Creek partnership going. And over the life of this grant, it was a 4-year grant, we built a partnership of over 40 public and private organizations. We worked with the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, private consultant land studies, the DEP and other Chickies Creek partners to put together a comprehensive watershed restoration plan for that county. And here you see our students getting involved in some of that work. We ended up participating in almost 50 different education outreach events, engaging over 5,000 individuals. This is a snapshot of Jen Weld teaching about soil erosion on a farm in the Chickies, where we're engaging newly hired conservation professionals on how to work with farmers, read the land, and develop conservation plans for those farmers. Read the farm workshop concept. And I believe we had, Jill was among the participants and involvements in that work as well, and some of her staff. We had over 1,600 volunteers through those 4 years, provide 4,500 volunteer hours in 63 different watershed improvement projects in the lower Susquehanna, many of them focused in the Chickies watershed. And then we had some of the grant dollars that were allocated toward projects. By working kind of innovatively, we were able to use less than $100,000 of that grant money, leverage over $345,000 in other funding, state, federal, some of the own landowners cost share, to install 10 different projects across the watershed that included riparian buffer restoration, stream restoration, agricultural BMPs, stormwater BMPs. We also developed enhanced education and outreach and research opportunities at our Southeast Ag Research and Extension Center, or CREC, which is a research farm the college owns in Lancaster County and is smack dab in the middle of the Chickies watershed, includes frontage on the Chickies, and a small tributary, Dellinger Run, runs right through the stream. So we are really beefing up our efforts on education and outreach related to agriculture and watershed science down at that research farm, taking advantage of its prime location in the Chickies Creek and Center County. And that the work that we're doing in the Chickies, both at CREC and in the entire watershed, has really set the stage for our current work, where we're engaged across 3 adjacent watersheds of Conawago, where we also have been working for quite a while, the Conoy Creek and the Chickies, to create a regional partnership that involves a lot of partners working on the ground to accelerate agricultural conservation practices in furtherance of these local water quality and Chesapeake Bay goals. So that's all I had, Secretary Roush. Thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to a bit of engaging conversation now.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt. And actually, you reminded me about Pennsylvania in Balance. We all had high expectations that this was going to get people coordinating. We were getting a lot of input, but for me, it was a really enlightening experience that a key theme that emerged almost organically from the group was soil health. That soil health was key to everything, and that people needed to look at nutrients and fertilizers and so forth as an asset, that they don't want to leave their farms. They want to design better soil health.
Absolutely.
That was fantastic. And I think you've also shown for all our listeners out there, there are just fantastic opportunities for people who are concerned about this to get involved as a volunteer and really make a difference. So thank you. Thank you. So we're going to jump right into our questions. If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat box where you'll find there's already some information available. And if we can get to them, we will. So I'll leap off the first question and I'll hand this off to Secretary McDonell and also Director Whitcomb. So after everything we've heard, what is the status of health of the waterways? And importantly, why has Pennsylvania not been meeting the base standards with all that we're doing?
No, thank you for that. I think, you know, some of what, and to put it into a little context, you know, Matt mentioned all of the work in Lancaster County. When we started, you know, Lancaster in the modeling was it was just about 3 out of every 10 of our pounds of nitrogen were coming out of that one county. So when you think we have 42 counties, there's obviously a big load there to deal with. They have really stepped up, you know, Penn State, Lancaster Clean Water Partners, and others to take that on. And it's one of the reasons why, again, we're doing that prioritization is, you know, the top 2 counties are basically responsible for a third or more of all of that nitrogen pollution. So, you know, getting those, getting best management practices, getting partnerships in place for those as a starting point is incredibly important. Jill, I don't know if you want to add.
Sure. And I think just for everyone's awareness, the scale at which we're working, and for those of you who like statistics, you know, based upon the 2017 Ag Census, Lancaster County has more than 5,100 farms, averaging in size of 77 acres. And if we put that into perspective, you know, comparing Lancaster County to our neighboring jurisdictions in the watershed, they have 2 times the total farms that are in Delaware, the total state of Delaware, more than 40% of the total farms in Maryland, and more than 10% of the total farms in Virginia. And then when we talk about the actual animal agriculture that we're looking at in Lancaster County, they have more than twice the amount of cows than the entire state of Maryland. And you know, that's a lot when we're just talking about one county. So when we're looking at this, the scale at which that we're working, I think that's really the essential piece to this. And this is why Lancaster is a significant focus for us. And this is why they're one of our top priorities. And it's great to hear how Penn State and other stakeholders are working in that county.
Thanks. So next, I'll hand it over to Matt for the next one. Are there changes that you've seen over the past 4 years that make you particularly optimistic for the future water quality of the Chesapeake and the rest of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, sure. I definitely. It's a very exciting time to be involved in this work. And, you know, I would go back to how Secretary McDonell laid out the planning process for the Phase 3 WIP, the entire process itself. It was really unprecedented, the amount of stakeholder input right from the start that was built into that, and citizen involvement. And being someone that's been around these issues now for quite a while and was around during the Phase 1 and Phase 2 watershed implementation plan processes, you know, even before that, the Chesapeake tributary strategy, where it was just kind of at that point rolled out, here you go. This was a much different effort where stakeholders were involved and partnerships were really built. The entire plan, while the department had kind of the obligation to develop that plan, really involved partners from the start through steering committee and work groups. I helped to co-chair an ag work group, and approximately half of our members, we had 5 full-time farmers who were on that work group. And so we had the input of the agriculture community from the start. And so that has created, I think, some buy-in into the recommendations coming out of this plan, and something that becomes a lot easier than to implement at a local level, which is where it needs to happen. That's where these management decisions, by their very nature, are related to how we use and manage the land, and so they must be done at the ultimate local level, at the landowner level. The other thing that really, I think, excites me is seeing more and more organizations that are working together at a local level to reach more farmers. So that includes, the conservation districts who have been doing this work for a long time, but also supported by non-government organizations, nonprofits, Penn State Extension and our center, putting in the time. We call it the boots on the ground, the muddy boots, that it almost, takes those conversations and the building of that trust a lot of times to get farmers to that position where they're ready to implement some of these practices. We see a lot of that happening, and a lot more support and understanding that funding for conservation isn't just about the funds to implement the practice. It's funds for the technical assistance and outreach that's necessary to have a landowner even want to implement these practices, and also taking some of the burden off of the landowner to navigate.
So I think we might have lost Matt there for a second. Well, hand off, what are the current nitrogen and phosphorus annual loads to the bay from the Susquehanna as compared to those measures in the early 80s? Secretary and Director Whitcomb?
Yeah, I'll ask Jill. I don't know if you have that data handy.
Well, I think it's important to know that there are multiple reports out there and publications and fact sheets. First of all is the department's integrated water quality report that measures water quality monitoring and assessments over time. USGS also, through their non-tidal network, determines the trends in the data from 1985 to now, and those trends go up and down, of course. So I think at the end of this session, there's the opportunity for you to click on some links, and we provided one that is most recent that the USGS has published in January of this year, noting the Chesapeake Bay nutrient trends and drivers. It doesn't go back to 1985, but it does go back a certain period of time, and clearly there's just a lot of information out there.
Approximately how much money has been spent cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay so far, trying to make the 2025 goal? You think, Jill?
Sure. So this is always a question that's asked, and of course it's a very important one. We have a lot of public funds that have been put forth, and we've identified those public funds, both federal and state, in the phase 3 WIP, as far as what our investment has been to date and what the needed investment is on top of that. I think it's really important to identify that local and private investment has not been captured anywhere. We don't track how much money a farmer puts into his manure storage, or how much money a landowner puts into her forest buffer. So those are the types of things that we don't know, and so clearly the investment has been exponentially greater than what the public funds have gone toward.
So Matt, one of the next questions we had on our list dovetails or segues nicely with one that was submitted on the chat. It said Shortle and others have advanced as possible to dramatically prune the required overall improvement dollars by selecting conservation practices that provide the most cost-effective reduction. And I know you've given me data sheets for this, and I just happen to have one of them in front of me. Riparian buffers at 27 million for 20% of the nitrogen, 46% of the phosphorus. Manure storages, in contrast, 200 million for 14 and 15%. But one of the submitted questions we had was what is being done to increase the establishment and maintenance of riparian buffers. So You want to comment on efficiency things as well as the riparian buffers?
Yeah, absolutely. Dean Roush. So yeah, buffers are very high priority practice and very, very critical to meeting our goals. So these are cost-effective strategies, among the most cost-effective. The soil health practices we talked about a little earlier would also certainly be in that category. But also buffers have many multiple co-benefits that come along with them. It's not just about reducing nutrients or sediment, but building really the ecosystem health of streams. That includes building the capacity of those streams to have diverse critters living in them, including, very importantly, the macroinvertebrates or aquatic insects, which are kind of the measuring stick by way we determine whether our streams are healthy and attaining water quality standards or not healthy and impaired. So yeah, there's been a focus and a priority for buffers for a number of years here. The DEP's companion agency, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, has really headed a lot of that work up in the state, developed new funding streams, and used existing grant programs to provide more funding for forest buffers, looking at innovations like flexible buffers that would provide some level of income for the landowner, whether that be gathering fruits and nuts or other uses of the shrubs and trees themselves. The USDA Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program continues to be a large funding source that has been used to implement riparian buffers across the Chesapeake Bay and the state. And there's just a ton of partners working collaboratively to outreach to landowners, get buffers in the ground. DCNR has hosted a buffer summit the last couple of years, bringing hundreds of folks together working on this. Penn State itself is doing a lot of work in this arena. The water team, the urban forestry team, Extension has created kind of across all those teams a new buffer team that's being chaired by our relatively new Extension faculty, Tyler Grow, who's focusing a lot of his research on buffers. And then I know in the chat there's some links to videos that talk about, once you plant these buffers, are they successful? There are definitely maintenance needs and obligations, and we've developed some video tools. The series is called Growing Great Buffers that help explain to landowners what's needed to do to maintain these buffers. So a big focus on that effort.
Right. So
across the Commonwealth.
one of the questioners also commented on the effects of the buffers and so forth are having on eel population establishment and freshwater mussels. And I think you're putting into the chat something about the change in eel population dynamics for people to follow.
Yeah, there's been efforts to restore the American eel going back a decade or more, led by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and others. A really nice article was done a couple of years ago in Penn Live. It kind of details that effort, and we were fortunate enough to have the reporter come out. We did a fish sampling in the Catawba Creek watershed, one of those watersheds where we focused a lot of our efforts, and the biologists were real excited to see some eels in that fish survey. It was a target watershed for reintroduction efforts a couple of years prior. So yeah, they could read that article. It's in the chat. It's a really good in-depth read on that effort.
Thanks, Matt. So Jill, one of the other questions, sort of a contrast to this, is what data exists to show that farmland is contributing more nitrogen, phosphorus, and silt to the Chesapeake Bay than forests and woodlands?
Sure. Again, kind of relating back to our integrated water quality report, there are impairments that are identified in that, causes and sources. Also to note, bring back what Matt had mentioned earlier in his presentation. Human interaction with the soil causes accelerated erosion and sedimentation. With that causes, nutrient runoff because of manure and fertilizer application. to the lands that would not be coming about, in a natural area. This does not say that there is no, leaf drop or nutrients that come from forested areas or those types of natural sector land uses, but the human interaction component really accelerates the nutrient and erosion and sedimentation on the landscape. And that's what we are trying to essentially minimize through all of the practices, through the buffers, through the implementation of erosion and sediment control plans on agriculture, through the implementation of manure and nutrient management plans. Those are the types of practices that we look to farmers to do so that they keep the soil and they keep the nutrients on their land and not in the water.
Thanks. So another question was, what are the innovative solutions being used to reduce the load of phosphorus in the Chesapeake Bay? Jill, do you have some pointers on that?
Sure. I love this question because whenever we talk about innovative, everyone wants to think brand new, right? But I think really what came about in the mid-2000s with the phosphorus index was innovative, and it still remains to be innovative, the way that we assess the potential risk for phosphorus runoff into surface waters. And the P-index is under revision, and we are working with the State Conservation Commission and Penn State to make those changes and update the phosphorus index.
Thanks.
One thing I wouldn't mind adding there, Dean Roush, on the innovation side of things, precision dairy feeding. Not only does that lead to, so this is the concept of ensuring that what we're feeding our cows is, what they need for a good diet to produce their milk, but is not over applying, for example, nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, and therefore the manures coming out the back end are lower in those nutrients as well. So that's another innovation, another practice that is recommended in the phase 3 WIP, and something a lot of Penn State researchers in animal science and dairy science are involved in.
I know the Penn State Dairy Extension team is really working on this currently.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I can, the only other thing I think, often, as was said, we go to new technology, new science. Some of what we've seen in this is, for example, in the north central part of the state, just, innovative connections between programs. So we provide Growing Greener dollars to Conservancy up there that then works with our Fish and Boat Commission to put in fish structures, which essentially get streams acting more like streams, not depositing sediment, not having eroding banks, all of those sorts of things. So it both improves a fishery for local residents, but it's also, reducing nitrogen, phosphorus runoff, sediment in the stream, et cetera. So that's been a successful enough program that we're funding actually 2 other teams that are being stood up to operate in similar ways. So sometimes the innovation is just like, how do we figure out the right connections in order to get things done at scale?
Yeah,
sure. So one of the questions asked about demonstration farms that are actively being used and so forth in the interest of time, but there is some question about what the role is for, I'll just assert that is a lot of demonstrations are being run and they're using cost share and so forth. But one of the other questions that's often controversial is how do anaerobic digestions mitigate any impact from nutrient pollution to the basin? Matt, Jill?
Yeah, I can jump in there. Jill had actually found a really terrific article on this on Penn State Extension website. It really looks at the fate and transport of nutrients in anaerobic digesters, and to cut that chase, they're terrific technologies for converting animal waste to energy, addressing odor impacts. They have some positives on pathogen control, but as far as addressing nutrient pollution, that's not really kind of a top of the line solution. the nutrients kind of stay in the system through the digestion process and remain in the effluent. So you still have to think about ways of addressing the nutrients. So I think that that's another one. We have a link to that article on Extension website. And yeah, bottom line, great environmentally friendly practice, probably not a priority nutrient reduction strategy.
Okay, so we're running out of time, but a key question people ask is, how does one get funding for stormwater management and bank stabilization improvements? Got some hints there, Jill?
Sure. We are, in my office, under my purview, we have Growing Greener, which is now open. That round is open through June 25th. And Section 319 funds, which is also open through June 25th. Those types of projects, stream restoration, floodplain reconnection, stormwater management projects, they are all eligible for funding through those two programs. There's also the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation through their small watersheds grants and their the local government implementation grants, or the LGI grants that we work together on administering. Those are the types of projects that alongside agriculture, we also do fund those projects. And then also people should look kind of beyond the norm, is looking at the CFA, the Commonwealth Financing Authority at the Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED. They have Act 13 funds that are available on an annual cycle as well. And if these types of practices lead to flood resiliency and climate resiliency in urban and suburban settings, that opens up more doors for them as well.
So thanks. The only last question I'm able to get to, I'll get to very, because it's short. We were asked if Pennsylvania is implementing best practices for roadside seedings to eliminate mowing, herbicide applications, and help with erosion sediment control. I was able to check up on this with Penn State's Weed Dream Team, and they said the short answer is yes. It is, best practices are being adopted. With that, we've run out of time. I want to thank our special guests, Secretary Patrick McDonell and Director Jill Whitcomb, for coming on with us. Thank our colleague Matt Royer as well. It's clear there's a lot of interest in this. We've got a very large number of additional questions in the chat, which we'll collect and study. But I want to thank our presenters today, and thank all of you for joining us, and remind you that there'll be another College Connections, same day, same time next month. Okay, same date of the month, that is. Okay, thanks a lot to all, and get out there and let's keep cleaning up that water.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.